All right, you're welcome back. It's talk time. Now, African economies already struggling from slowing demand from China, and flat commodity prices have now been thrown into uncertainty along with the rest of the world following the exit of UK from European Union, also known as Brexit. Now, an economist, Austin Nweze, spoke to us earlier on the impact of Brexit.
Gives Nigeria an opportunity to deal with the British in trade-wise, one-on-one, without the encumbrances of EU conditions, which will not make it possible for Nigeria to trade, especially in the area of agriculture. Nigeria has not been able to export some of this because they're not able to meet some of the conditionalities, the EU, but with the Britain, dealing directly with the British, they'll be more flexible. Okay, they're more flexible, and don't forget that Britain likes to deal, to have control in everything that they do. That's their nature.
Okay, yes, indeed. Now, within a space of 24 hours, Britain went from, credit rating that was stable to negative as a result of Brexit.
Well, it's important to also note that this is not the first time they've tried to pull out. They've had a campaign before to pull out, either to stay or to remain. And those who wanted to stay won that time.
And it's interesting, Busalami, that the older generation actually chose to, to leave the EU. But the younger generation, I'm thinking, is it that they don't understand what it means, sovereignty? And of course, the immigration issues, which are the major issues, that have led to this Brexit that's affecting the rest of the world right now, including Nigeria. Indeed.
For those who witnessed the recession then will understand what it means to want Britain to remain in the European Union courts, because a lot of advantages have. Some have argued.
Joining the EU, many people have said the great has been removed from Great Britain. I don't know.
All right.
All right, we have an economist, Sam Ohuabunwa, here in the studio. Good morning, and thanks for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you very much.
And of course, Johnson Chukwu, I will not make that mistake of calling you John Chukwu again. He's a financial analyst. He's also here with us this morning. Good morning, gentlemen, once again. Now, 51.9% of Britain said leave, and the rest, about 48 or so, decided that they want to stay. But of course, the majority had their way eventually. What we're trying to find out with this discussion, of course, is how all of this plays out for Nigeria. But maybe you want to touch on the impact on the EU before we, dovetail to how it affects Nigeria. Let's start with you, Mr. Ohuabunwa.
Well, I'm just seeing what is happening to be in consonance with what the Bible says. There's a time to grow, there's a time to die, there's a time to enlarge, there's a time to constrict. Because several years ago, there was a move for consolidation. There was a move for integration. But we're now seeing that unraveling. That shows there's nothing that is perfect. Certain things have opposite and correct differences. I believe that what has happened is what you call nostalgia, always thinking that the years past were better. Human beings seem to think that yesterday was better, the good old days. That's why you just say that the older generation were thinking of the good old days than now. I think the British have a right to decide what they want, but as a rational person, I have my own worries and anxieties as to the rightness of that decision, because it's comparing apple with apple. If we look at the challenges that the global economy is facing now, it requires greater integration. It requires greater ability to interact, and both in terms of diplomacy, in terms of dealing with regional economic issues, in terms of dealing with global security issues. The more we are together in this battle, the better for us. But of course, as I said, every group has what is best for them. But for our country, I'm sure we have some consequences that will flow from from this, just like everywhere. Already European markets are in jitters. The global market is in jitters because of the uncertainty and volatility that have arisen from that. We don't know who is next, because the moment you open the Pandora box and say
you can't
enter and exit. So
which of course will bring us to the question of the ripple effect of this on some other smaller regional groups, maybe like ECOWAS, like AU, for instance. We can't run away from the fact that most of them are modeled after the EU and the ideologies and what it stands for.
Well, for those smaller units, or those other common customs unions, one of the things they should do is to learn from the reasons why European Union is unraveling. And the basic thing is this, that Britain and Germany and France are carrying the burden of the rest of continental Europe. And basically, of the 29 countries that are members of the European Union, 19 of them are members of the common currency. There is free movement of goods, people, and capital and financial assets across the borders of those 29 countries. What has happened is that, which is also what led to the British voting to exit the Union, is that you've seen weaker countries, countries with lower income level, migrating to go and enjoy benefits in countries with superior income level, higher level of development. There is already a process in place that entails that the richer countries pay to support the infrastructural rebuilding or regeneration of those weaker countries. But beyond that payment, Britain pays about £85 billion every year to the net contribution to the European Union. Beyond that, there's also a net migration into Britain. And that is exerting a lot of pressure on the British economy. And that is actually what triggered the desire of British to exit the Union. So for those countries, the ECOWAS country, the European African Union, we need to now look at, in defining the convergence criteria, we need to define what we need to do to make sure you have some certain level of income equality to prevent
overdependence.
Mass movement of people from weaker economies to other economies.
But those will also contribute to the economy. All those who are moving, if you look at GDP of Great Britain or anywhere else, part of that GDP is contributed who have moved, who have migrated to those places. So migration is not a one-sided, it's not evil.
It's mutually beneficial.
It's mutual. If people have migrated from one country, they are contributing to the GDP, to the economic, they become consumers of your product. So it's a question of balancing what is is it the primordial sentiment of wanting just to do what you want, admit those you want, refuse to, I mean, sometimes we do not properly weigh both benefits. I agree, but we need to weigh both benefits and put them. Sometimes we look at one side only. Migration causes pressure in one area. It also brings benefit in other areas.
All right, we'll look
Except,
at those.
course,
we'll
if
look
the
at those
minus
benefits.
outweighs
That is it.
plus,
That
really.
is it.
Let's bring you some quick facts about the European Union. Now, the EU was formerly known as the European Economic Community, EEC, until the name changed in 1993. The Community of States is an economic and political union of 28 countries, now 27 member states, after the exit of the United Kingdom.
Each of the countries within the Union are independent, but they agreed to trade under the agreements made between the nations. The Union developed a single Europe-wide free market for the free movement of people, goods, services, and capital within the internal market.
Now, what began as a purely economic union evolved into an organization spanning policy areas from climate, environment, and health to external relations and security, justice, and migration.
The EU is based on the rule of law. Everything it does is founded on treaties, voluntarily and democratically agreed by its member countries. So
Okay, let's come to you, gentlemen, before we go on to, give you further background. Was this Brexit, was it a no to globalization? I mean, the EU started as an economic bloc, for the purposes of trade and all of that, only for it to evolve into a political, where is the sovereignty of nations, which was exactly, the major issue why Britain actually opted out.
Yeah.
Is this a no to globalization?
Well, so it looks like that's the beginning of the unraveling of globalization. It's the beginning, because this was also where globalization was manufactured. The necessity to break down borders, allow free access of goods and services across the world, believing that the economic benefits outweigh the disadvantage, because there's nothing that does not have, you know, two sides. And when you see this happen from the center of that, it begins to call to question globalization, economic integration, and all that, because that has become the fad everywhere. The ASEAN, all the groups are coming together economically. Maybe it will lead to rewriting some of the rules of engagement, as my brother just said. It could be that they need to put some marks as to say, this is how far we can go, and this is how far. You know, the human being has that tendency to derail anything he starts, and to take things for granted.
If you even trace the history of how Britain came to become part of EU, you realize the first time they made an overture to join the EU, they were rebuffed.
Yeah.
They were told no. So there must be something about them now which I think if they pulled out, will cause some a negative effect more than the positive effect, really.
Well, if you look at, you have to recognize that the British economy is the 5th largest economy in the world. Positive migration, in the sense that you have a lot more people coming to move into Britain from Europe, continental Europe, than those British leaving Britain to go and live in other parts of Europe. There is a challenge. Britain is also a huge market. Britain is the financial capital of Europe. A lot of companies that operate in...
And their headquarters.
Yes, are headquartered in London. So Britain serves as, we call it in social policy, a melting point for European businesses. So Britain exiting the European Union will shrink the size of the European market. We shrink the size of even consumer goods production in UK, because once the market size has shrunk, then every other thing will be negatively affected. Britain, its exit will not just have effect on the European Union, will also have effect on the general size of the world GDP, because that might shrink a bit.
All right, so let's look at how Brexit is already affecting African countries, particularly Nigeria. Let's see some underlying implications of the Brexit on Nigeria. Nigeria, a former British colony and member of the Commonwealth, is Britain's second largest trading partner in Africa after South Africa, with about 2.4 trillion naira in 2015 alone. Now, this implies that investments in Nigeria may reduce if the economic strength of its trade partner becomes threatened.
As of December 2014, the UK Department for International Development, that's the DFID, had a portfolio of 40 projects in Nigeria with a planned budget of £232 million for 2014-2015, which include grants to non-profit technical assistance and partnerships with other development agencies.
Let's even look at the area of grants and aid. I mean, we all know that Britain is a major source of aid for Nigeria. You know, a major one. Do you see this, being affected, especially in the short term? Well, maybe in the long term, it might change.
Well, I must say this caveat: I'm not a fan of AIDS.
Okay.
And giving handouts, but if you have to look at the issue of AIDS, Nigeria should actually be positively impacted, because Britain will no longer have the need to support continental Europe. So it then means that it will now go into bilateral relationship with countries it considers of economic importance.
Especially considering the fact that Nigeria is part of the Commonwealth.
Beyond Nigeria being part of the Commonwealth, Nigeria occupies some sensitive position in the world. The stability of Nigeria is critical to make sure that you have stability in Africa. Because if Nigeria unravels, the whole of Africa will be in a major crisis. Nigeria accounts for about 20% of the African population. So it is in the interest of world powers that will maintain some level of stability, in the social and political stability in the country. And it's also in the interest of Britain that Nigeria develops economically and socially, so that even the migration pressure of Nigerians leaving Nigeria to go and live in Britain will reduce. If you just look at the fact that South Africans don't need visa to go to Britain, but Nigerians need a visa to go to Britain. Simple reason, because if they don't impose that visa restriction, the level of migration from Nigeria to Britain would have been massive. So it's in the interest of Britain that, I mean, to ensure that a country that it has such level of social relationship with, it also develops economically.
So do you foresee any more grants coming to the country if you follow the forecast that we have, that because of this Brexit, Brexit, I beg your pardon, that the GDP of Britain will be affected. Of course, volatility will be recorded. Do you think they will be in the position to give more aids?
I don't think Britain loves Nigeria more than it loves their neighbors in the European Union. I don't think so, because if you look at our history with Britain, it has not been of love. It's that of exploitation, colonial power. What is the source of raw materials? What is the source of that's what Britain has for us, and that's the truth. So I'm not thinking that there's the fact that they have broken, so to say, with their brothers on the Western Hemisphere means they would look at us much more fairly and give us more aid. I do not think so, because the same group of people who don't want migrants, and they don't care where the migrants come from, whether they come from Nigeria or from Syria. It's the same, the migrants, the group of people who voted to leave don't want migration. They want UK or England or for English people alone. And that's what they're interested in. So I don't see them developing an extraordinary love for us more than they would love their neighbor. I think there is even going to be a decline. First is that you're going to see the fall in British pound is going to be making exports to UK cheaper, but imports more expensive. And Nigerians import a lot from Britain. So that in itself will reduce trade between us and Britain because of the lower depreciation of their currency, which now for us who are importers, because if the issues were that they were going to be exporting a lot, it will be cheaper for them to export, but we are importers, so it's going to be an issue for us, and we want the investment in the country.
I've heard the argument that you probably will have cheaper goods. Yes. Yeah.
Because the pounds have weakened, it becomes cheaper
for us to import
from them.
Yes. And their own export.
Yeah, their own
export to our country will be more expensive.
No, for them to export, it's actually cheaper, because their goods will become more attractive in the sense that it's cheaper to the world to import from them.
So if you get goods from UK, for instance, now you buy cheaper in the Nigerian market. That's what it means?
Yes.
But
goods made in Britain will now be cheaper.
But if they wanted to buy from us,
if they want to buy from us, then it will be more expensive for them to import.
That's the point I was trying to make.
That's the point I was
trying to make. That since the trade, the two-way trade is going to be affected. Because today we want more of British people to buy from us. We are looking at the possibility of having people to buy from us, not to buy from Britain.
Okay. All right, hold on, gentlemen. Of course, this is very interesting. Analysts say stocks began the week on a negative footing as sell-offs across board prevailed, causing investors to lose a whopping 278 billion naira on Monday alone, as concerns that the market might plummet due to the decision of Britain to leave the European Union.
Furthermore, some traders say that there was the worry that the Brexit might slow foreign interest in the market. Evidence of this was seen on Monday when the Nigerian Stock Exchange market capitalization dropped to 10.248 trillion naira from 10.526 trillion naira last Friday. Good thing or bad thing?
Yes, indeed, even before Brexit, there was a risk factor. You know, Nigeria was not necessarily very attractive for investors. Does this even further, worsen the case for Nigeria as far as investments are concerned?
Well, I think this is now taking it from another point.
Okay.
The reason Nigeria wasn't attractive, as you were saying, was because of our internal policies, internal domestic economic policies that did not promote investments. That was the issue. But the British problem now causes a global volatility that has caused fear. And when there is fear and uncertainty, investors hold back. And that's what is happening. Because I think that with the change that Nigeria has, the new policy rethink that has begun to make us liberalize our foreign exchange transactions would actually have been positive. And that's why you saw the Nigerian stock index rise at the time the announcement was made.
Yes.
But the reality is that investors are jittery. They are worried about the consequences of what Britain has started. So that is what is.
So the CBN
affecting.
policy won't help in any way, shape or fashion, Mr. Chukwu?
Well, the CBN policy to allow Naira to float would ordinarily open the doors for foreign portfolio investors and foreign direct investors. Apart from the other channels of inflow, foreign exchange inflow, like improving the volume of non-oil exports and improving the amounts that we receive under home remittances. But what has happened, the rallies we saw in the equities market prior to the Brexit was driven by speculation.
Yeah.
And that speculation was purely on the basis that with the change in foreign exchange policy, that foreign portfolio investors will now come. So local investors, we are taking position ahead of foreign portfolio investors' arrival.
Yes.
So when
waiting to
that
Now the
Brexit,
foreign investors don't even have enough money to
when
go
they,
around.
it's not that they don't have enough money. When the Brexit exit happened, it created automatically threw the world into a turmoil. And everybody was pulling back. Virtually all the exchanges went down. But interestingly, after the close of business yesterday, most of the international exchanges are recovering. I mean, FSTC 100 gained about 0.15. Even pounds gained 0.4% yesterday. But we're beginning to see kind of stability being restored. The reality of the matter is that the panics created as a result of the vote is not going to be what will happen in real life.
So what we just had is like a shock?
It's just a panic.
Like a shock.
Okay. So because Britain has not even gone into negotiations on the terms in which we trade with the European Union. Already, financial institutions in London have made it clear that some of them may relocate out of London if they do not continue to enjoy free movement of goods, people, and capital between Britain and the European Union. So you don't rule out the possibility that Britain will go into a trade agreement with the rest of Europe to allow for still flow of goods and services. What I think Britain wants to do is to stop unintended migration into Britain.
Okay, all right. So let's bring you more on this. Bilateral trade between Nigeria and the UK currently valued at £6 billion. That's about $8.3 billion and projected to reach 20 billion naira by 2020. May be disrupted as trade agreements made under the auspices of the EU may be renegotiated. Okay. Do you see this happening?
Yeah, sure it will. Because most of the trade agreements were made with Europe, the European Union. You have the economic partnership agreements, for example, which were done with the regional body. But now Nigeria has to renegotiate with UK on its own terms.
Yes.
And those trade negotiations take some time to come to being. So that is going to be an issue. And as I said earlier on, the volume of trade from Britain on our side is probably going to decline. We may be buying a lot more, but we want them to buy more from us. That's the push of Nigeria. Let's export more. And if there's this imbalance in power value of currencies, it's in their own advantage that we import more from them.
Yeah, talking about agreement, perhaps this is not too relevant, but let's see if we can flow with it. You're aware that Nigeria is also in the market for loan in the UK bond market. You're aware. Will this affect it?
Well, yes, to some extent, but the major thing that will affect Nigeria's capacity to borrow to access Eurobond market is our weak economic status today. If you look at we just been downgraded. Our credit outlook has been downgraded. But beyond that, our foreign exchange earning is weak. And then we have created some level of political cloud about our economic direction. So investors are not going to be very excited throwing money at Nigeria. So that will be the major constraint to Nigeria accessing the European bond market. When they went for the roadshow, I was among those that said it was unnecessary at that point. Because if before you go to the dance outside, you must
prepare yourself.
Yeah, you must prepare yourself. You must look at yourself in the mirror and be sure, look, I am good enough to go and dance. So Nigeria today is not one of the most attractive economies for lenders to lend. And I think
which means, of course, Nigeria really has a lot of work to do in rethinking its competitive advantage. I mean, looking at our monoproduct economy, I mean, oil is all we have going for us right now. That looks like it's going to even further
except, of course, the first quarter generated a bit more. Non-oil revenue generated a bit. There was a bit of upward review there.
Yes,
first quarter of this.
Some tax income and I think some increase in VAT. You know, the truth is this: when we sit down and whine about our single export economy, I just laugh. Simple is in that economic development is never an accident. Countries sit down and say, this is how we want to develop our economy. We either by default or design fail to diversify our economy and have remained a monoproduct, export product economy. If we begin that process today, is it going to be a service economy or a productive economy, a manufacturing economy? Then if it has to be a manufacturing economy because we have a large population, what are the things we need to put in place? What are the key infrastructure we need to put in place? When the British came here, they did a rail line from Port Harcourt to Enugu just to evacuate coal. You understand? And they did another rail line from Kano to Lagos. Simply, they wanted to evacuate coal. So they were building the rail line based on economic value chain. What have we done as a country since they left to build structures that will lead to this economy becoming productive? We've not done anything. And we sit there and whine and say, look, we have a monoproduct economy because we chose not to do nothing
be proactive.
And then allow that to.
All right, let's bring you more. Now, data from the National Bureau of Statistics shows that the UK was Nigeria's largest source of foreign investment in 2015. A slowing British economy and its reverberating effects could signal a drop in investment, trade, and also remittances from Nigerians in diaspora.
Nigeria has been benefiting from the free trade tariff access to the British to the EU. Now, with Britain's exit, they may become a little bit difficult for Nigeria. Two questions in one, really, that of remittances and of the free tariff access. Mr. Nwabon.
Well, like I had said earlier on, we are going to suffer some economic consequences of this problem based from a global perspective and also from a bilateral perspective. When you look at the issues of remittances, because if you open up what is the flow of investment into Nigeria, you know that one area is the investment in oil and gas, which is a major area of foreign exchange entrance into the country in terms of direct investment. Of course, we've seen a couple of things happening in telecommunications and all that. But the slowing down of the attractiveness of Nigeria slowed down everything. Now, the economy of Britain is in jeopardy right now, either because of panic or their fundamentals. Therefore, there's going to be a decline. And I had said the need for us to begin to develop new trade terms with the UK would delay a lot of trade transactions, except that the joy of it is that actually the exit of UK from EU may take another 2 years. So in reality, nothing may change
until that time.
in the
won't that even make it more uncertain? I mean, now we're talking about an exit already and Frexit for that matter.
Yeah.
I mean,
let me throw some light on these issues. One, rightly, if the economy of Britain slows down, you mentioned the issue of home remittances. Home remittances
about $21 billion or so.
Home remittances come from Nigerians resident in UK who send money. So they will have difficulties keeping their jobs. So their income level will go down, therefore the amount they remit to support their families will also go down. But we also have to look at, I'm also looking at some positive to it. Today, a Nigerian cannot easily get a job in Britain if there is any European who is seeking for that job.
That same job.
So it simply means when Britain exits, that we will be competent Nigerians will be in a position to compete with their skills as much as
so
the
we have 2 years now to prepare as well.
As much as Europeans can. So it no longer, at this point, we're no longer at disadvantage in terms of lining behind the Europeans.
Yes.
Until
who would naturally come first anyway.
So you may actually see in the medium to long term an increase in the level of remittances. In the medium term, not in the immediate term. Okay. Because you may see more Nigerians getting to Britain and securing jobs. You remember that Britain even had what they call high impact, highly skilled scheme where they gave permanent residence to Nigerians and other nationals to come and live in Britain. At the same time, they are fighting against
Americans do.
migrants.
All right, let's
from Europe.
bring further information before we round this off. Now, with Brexit, Nigerians and other Africans living in the UK, as well as those hoping to go to the UK, will be concerned about their immigration status. Very true. It's unclear what exactly a post-Brexit immigration policy would look like. Some analysts believe that controls are bound to be tighter, and this really is a fact.
And that's where I stand. I believe that since immigration was a major issue for this, and perhaps those who are going to take over from David Cameron are people who support the Brexit and the apparent preference of independent action by UK in managing its affairs, both economic, political, diplomatic. And therefore, I see that one of the areas they've had problem is immigration from Nigeria. That most European countries and the West have had problem for Nigeria, people going on holidays and not coming back. And I think that is not going to reduce. The competition with other Europeans will still remain. The fact that they are withdrawing from UK doesn't mean Europeans cannot come to Britain. They will. The only thing is that they will now have a choice. It's not a matter of everybody who wants to come. And if you're looking at qualified people, they will come from all over the world to compete with Nigerians. So I personally do not think that life will be better for Nigerians in terms of immigration. The same tough immigration stance that exists. Of course, they want to take the best. Every country wants to take the best from the rest of the world.
Will that affect our footballers, really? Because there have been agitations about that some Nigerian footballers might be shortchanged this particular arrangement.
No, I think the arrangement they have is that each British team has a maximum number of foreigners, and there's also a maximum number of non-Europeans. So, in fact, if you ask me, I also think it will work in their favor because these are exceptional skills.
Okay, so before we go, gentlemen, let's bring this. Thursday's decision by Britain to leave the EU also has political implications for Nigeria, the first of which may be a heightened nationalistic pressure among Nigerian ethnic groups calling for sovereign states. Of course, you already have the NDA saying they want a Brexit-like referendum. IPOP too, you know, they've been asking for something similar. And of course, just like Busolami said earlier, this AU, ECOWAS, and all the regional blocs, they may begin to have some kind of, you know, cold feet towards, you know, this big,
Probably have to exit this time around. So.
Well, I have written an article recently, just before even the votes were taken, asking whether Nigeria can learn anything from what they're doing, both what the Scots did, had a referendum to stay, and this UK exit. So you should teach Nigeria a lesson on how to solve national and political issues. Britain was the one who brought Nigeria together. You know, whether we liked it or not, there was no referendum to bring us together. We just came together. We're managing this country, and we still find that there are issues. Like I speak, I always want an opportunity to restructure the country so that we can have a country of equal citizenship where every citizen is contented and happy to belong. But if you see what is going on with agitations, rather than killing ourselves, sending Nigerian army to kill Nigerians with Nigerian weapons, let's do let's do a referendum.
Mr. Chukwu, do you subscribe to that?
Yes. My take is that the structure we have now is unsustainable. Yeah. So that we do it now or do it in the near future or in the far future. But there's no way, there's no structure, there's no country where the confederating units are confederated solely for the sharing of national cake.
Yes.
And there is no effort. The system is not designed for economic development. It's not designed for shared development. It's not designed for integration. It's designed purposely for sharing of national cake. Okay. We need to reform that. We need to change the structure so that each of the confederating units will contribute to the economic growth and social development of this country. This model cannot be sustained.
For example, we can do a referendum on the recommendation of national conference. Do
we
want them or we don't want them?
Not necessarily that we want to.
No, not so. I'm going to tell you, most people want good for this country. If we can work together, many people prefer that than going their separate.
Indeed, indeed. And on that note, I want to say thank you so much, gentlemen. Mazi Samu Huabungwa, an industrialist.
Why did you call him Mazi?
I like to, because that's who he is.
Okay, Mazi.
Thank you,
Yes, and Mr. Johnson Chukwu, it's been nice having you gentlemen on TVC Breakfast.
I'm also qualified to be a
To
man.
be a man.
Because my father has died.
No, but there can't be two bars this year.
Oh, see?
There you go.
Thank you for coming, sir.
Thank you.